I also would like to mention we do have a raffle going on for this evening. We'll do the drawing at the end of the break. So throughout this and during the break, you have an opportunity to check out. There's some great prizes, about 9 in all. Oh, I forgot as well. We do have the Body Studio here. We have Carl and Doug Bennett here from the Body Studio. A fantastic group of personal trainers right here in Cohasset. Been very instrumental in my own well-being. So glad to have you guys here. Now, to get started with this evening's events, I'd like to introduce you to our guest speaker. Her name is Diane Berry. I've had an opportunity to speak with her for a few minutes here, and she's an awesome person. She's one of Mark's original patients. Now, Mark's been in practice about 28 years, so that's quite the relationship. She has been in the entertainment industry here in the Boston area for, she mentioned about 40 years, but I don't want to date you. She also has her own entertainment company, so obviously the stress involved with all that is pretty understandable. So, without further ado, I want to introduce Diane, and we'll get started with our evening. Thank you so much.
When I used to sing, I used to try to project like Ethel Merman, so I don't like microphones, so I hope that my diaphragm is still working. Can everybody hear me? Yeah. Mark called me today, and he asked me if I would introduce him tonight, and I said, what is it on? He said, stress, and I thought that was fascinating, because one of the most frightening things for me is to get up and speak in front of people. So I said, perfect. And I asked him if there was anything that was written that he'd like me to read, and he told me to speak from my heart. So I'm going to do that right now. I met Mark when I was 35, I'm 62, and I was a mess. I was a drug addict. I was messed up mentally, physically, and spiritually. I had all of the great components to begin with Mark Nicola. And of course I didn't like him because everybody was wrong but me. And I walked in and announced to him that I wasn't going to give up drugs. And he said, that's fine, I'll be here. And he was there. He's been there for me for 27 years. He has taken me through a journey of which I would never have been through without him. He has healed me. I've had cataracts, and I've had 1 knee surgery, but that's it. And with what I've done with my body through the years, it's amazing I'm still standing here, But with his patience and his love, I finally gave up sugar this year after 27 years in Relaxation. So believe me, it doesn't happen overnight. But, he loves you. He really gently, unconditionally, the word love applies to Mark Nicola. He's patient. He gets you, even when you don't get you. And he genuinely cares. And for me, I needed that. I needed someone that, I was like a fort. I had walls this thick, and he just one by one kept working on it until I could be here today and be actually able to speak with you. I could never have done this 27 years ago. I really could not have. And one of the stories I did tell him that I wanted to mention, I hope it comes out right, but here goes. This elastic band is a very, very important instrument in our lives. He was sitting in his office one day, and I was about to possibly at that time manage his career, which I'm not doing. He doesn't really need me anymore. And I was a little pompous, I'm a booking agent, and it just comes with the territories. And I began telling him how he was lucky that he hired me, because when he was on the road and he might do something that maybe someone didn't like, I would be there to stand up for him. And I felt very true in what I was saying, and Mark, who's been kind and loving and gentle, stood up from behind his desk, and he walked over and he sat right next to me. And he said to me, don't ever say that to me again. And I went, see, that's what I mean. That's just what I'm talking about. He said, no, I want you to really hear me. He said, that side of my personality that you're speaking about right now, right here. He didn't have elastic band at the time, but he said, it's right here on the end of the elastic band. And if I'm misquoting him, I'll let him correct me when he comes out here tonight. And he said, the healer in me, and the side that you come here for, is on this side of the elastic band. He said, they're both important. He said, from the stretch, from both sides of me, comes the growth. And I want to tell you, I've just been through something the last 3 weeks that he doesn't even know about yet, that is just unbelievable. And I had this here and this here. I was pulled, stretched about as far as I could be stretched. And the growth and transformation that came out of this in the middle is true. That's for for me what it's all about, just an elastic band. So I walked into Mark's office for years since then. I said, you know, Mark, you're right. Life isn't about a box of chocolates. It's just an elastic band. And with that, I want to welcome Mark Riccoli.
Being not only a great friend, a very special patient, she's a good Jewish girl. What's not to love? All right, first of all, before we get started, I'd like to thank everybody for putting this event together. I'd like to thank Amy, of course, everybody at Santi, Ralph and Diane, staff in good health, Dave Bigley, all the best, Doug Bennett, Body Studio, of course, Diane Berry, Jeff Spratt, Dave Green, Sound, Margot Critchfield, St. Stephen's Church, and of course everybody at the Red Lion. And tonight we're really going to talk about you. We're going to talk about your lives from the perspective of stress. I'm going to start the first half off. We're going to basically go through this outline together. And after the brief intermission, the second half, it's going to be purely inspirational. I'm just going to go right from the Spirit. I have a lot to say, but we'll start off basically introducing you to the reality of stress. So everybody has an outline, I trust? If anybody doesn't, please raise your hand. Okay, great. We use the word stress. I used to, in the old days, tell patients you're not allowed to use the word stress in this office because it's a convenience. When you say the word stress and you do use that as a word, it really sort of keeps you insulated from having to speak about what it's really all about in your life, what it's causing, what's happening in your life. You know, people commonly just say, I feel stressed. You hear it every day. I feel stressed out. It's a very common term. But it really affords us a dangerous luxury because it doesn't force us to really get to the bottom of what we're trying to say about the heartache, about the anger, the frustration, the fear, the blockages in our lives that are keeping us from being who we truly came to be. So we're going to talk about it from the perspective of what it is biologically, what happens inside your body and your mind. And as I said, the second half, we're going to talk about it from the perspective of your higher mind and your spirit. But we start off with the 3 stages of stress. It's a biological word, as it says, that represents the human inability to adapt appropriately to emotional or physical threats, both real and imagined. That's a very important part of the equation, both real and imagined. There is no difference between the stress that you perceive and the stress that you experience materially. The term stress was first coined by American psychologists during the 1920s and was further popularized by the endocrinologist Hans Seeley in the 1930s. Seeley first researched the effects of stress on animals, discovering that all animals experience similar biological reactions. It could be broken down to 3 stages: alarm, resistance, recovery. Seeley's 3 stages of biochemical response to threat became known as the general adaptation syndrome. The alarm stage represents the body's production of adrenaline in anticipation and during the first recognition of any perceived threat. Adrenaline produces the fight-or-flight response that enables the organism to respond to perceived threat at an accelerated rate. So in other words, when you first encounter stress, one of the first things that happens is you feel a hormonal shift. There are 45 different chemicals that your body produces the minute you go into an alarm stage. Now again, alarm stage produces 45 different hormones that you normally don't produce. We've all heard the great stories about grandmothers who can lift cars off their grandchildren at the last moment of an emergency, etc. You can run faster, you get stronger, you have superior perception, ability, strength, speed, agility, for very short bursts. Because Mother Nature said, look, it's not always going to be smooth sailing. There are going to be periods of time where we have to run out of fiery buildings, etc. That is life's reality, unfortunately. So we were provided with these exceptional hormones that produce exceptionalism, a remarkable capability to do things that normally we couldn't even dream of. So during that alarm stage, when you're producing adrenaline, your body and your mind are moved into completely different directions. It's a remarkable, and a miraculous chemistry. Number 2 is resistance, because nature is remarkable in that it says, look, we'll never do one thing without doing the other. It's always about balance. So if there's an alarm phase that motivates us, that mobilizes us, that gears us up for something very unique, perhaps to save a life, perhaps our own, we also have to have a system that says, well, we can't keep pushing to the point where we exhaust ourselves, explode from all of this incredible energy that we're producing. So we have to have a braking system, not just an acceleration system. Remarkable that nature has all this worked out. So alarm is the acceleration system. Resistance stage is our braking system. It says, put the brakes on, we can't keep pushing this hard, this fast, this intensely. So resistance represents the body's attempt to cope long-term with perceived threat. This stage gradually depletes the body's biochemical resources and can't keep up with demand. So again, the brakes are saying, let's pull back or else we're going to run out of fuel, we're going to run out of energy, life force. We're going to run out of all of our natural energies. And number 3 is the recovery stage. Actually, that should say the recovery stage. That represents the body's inability to maintain normal function. If this stage continues long-term without recovery, vital glands, organs, and the immune system will likely become damaged. Physical disease and mental illness are often the result. One important point is this. If anybody gets stuck in any one of these 3 phases, and that can happen, that's quite common. If anybody's biochemistry gets stuck in any one of these phases, disease will ensue. It's virtually impossible for disease to happen without being stuck in any one of these phases. The symptoms of stress, of course, elevated heart rate, sweating, insomnia, headaches, muscular tension, irritability, weight loss, weight gain, weakened immunity that leads to more frequent cold, flu, and sudden onset of allergies, acidosis, ulcers, gastric disturbances, depression, anxiety, and fluid retention. It sounds like America circa 2009. And of course, stress plays a very significant role with all of the different conditions and diseases that we're all faced with constantly. Ancient Chinese medicine said 65% of all disease, this is 3,000 years ago, 65% of all disease is related to what you and I commonly think of as stress. Being stuck in one of these phases without the ability to balance out. One of the more important issues of stress, number 2, is eustress versus distress. Hans Seeley showed that there were 2 distinctly different biological manifestations from stress. Where early onset stress increases and enhances function, that's what's called eustress. The idea of getting charged up before a football game, the idea of getting charged up before some real exciting event. The difference between excitement versus stress. That's how you and I would refer to it. The difference between really getting yourself pumped and jacked over something exciting, going on a ski trip, visiting a friend you've not seen in a long time. It'll produce adrenaline. It'll produce the same kind of symptoms that alarm stage produces. Not for purposes of sickness or illness or negativity, but actual excitement. So eustress is what you and I might think of as kind of a good mobilization of some of those hormones. A positive mobilization of many of those hormones. Distress is an entirely different matter. Distress is a trip to the dental office. Distress is a trip up and down the Southeast Expressway. Distress is being audited by the IRS. Distress is also perception. We keep coming back to the reality that you create in your mind being the basis for the stress experience. So again, if your perception is that wherever you're headed is going to be a negative experience, if you're on the way to the dental office thinking this is going to be horrible and you're starting to program a reality in your mind, create a reality in your mind that starts to produce a little mini movie that says, we're in big trouble here, this is going to be a horrible experience. It is not eustress, it is distress. But it's a choice, because you can also reformat and reprogram and say, wow, I really need the dental work. Think how much better I'm going to feel not going through life with toothaches. You know, my old friend Dr. Dec10 used to have on his ceiling in his dental office, when you're back in the chair, he'd have these magnificent Sierra pictures, Sierra Club pictures of gorgeous mountainous slopes, beautiful getaways in the Bahamas, magnificent pictures, full-size posters on the ceiling, because he understood that the brain works in a certain way that if you feel it in a positive way, stress is a good thing. If you feel it in a negative way, stress is a bad thing. So he was all too ready to help program us before we got too nervous about what he was going to do in our mouth to take a quick little momentary trip to the Sierra Nevada mountains. And that's exactly how it works. That's what eustress is about. It's all a matter of perception. The difference between relative perception, experiences real or imagined, and coping resources are the main factors determining eustress and distress. The HPA is extremely important, the hypothalamic pituitary adrenal axis. This is the hormonal aspect of stress. It represents the biofeedback loop that activates stress hormone activity in the body, that initiates eustress and ultimately causes distress. Cortisol, epinephrine, norepinephrine, and as I said a moment ago, 45 different hormones initiate communication and mobilization of all brain and body systems. Your entire being is on one page. Think of all the times that you're distracted. A lot of stuff going on. The radio's on in the car. The guy in front of you just cut you off. There's all kinds of stuff going on all day long to distract us. But when there's perception of stress, that all stops. The body becomes unified with the mind, and together they become single-mindedly focused on self-preservation. Anybody who's ever been an offender bender or anything worse than that, you understand what I'm talking about. One of the things that I think is so very, very important here is to understand that we have choices when it comes to stress. As we said a few moments ago, stress is very serious business, and the second half I'm going to talk a great deal more about the very serious potentials of stress based on research. But it's really important to understand that stress is a biochemical reality that you have choices with and that you have choices about. We mentioned some supplements here under number 3. Things that I chose when Amy asked me, she said, is there a way we can actually make some lists of biochemical support systems, things that are available over the counter that make a difference? And these things make a tremendous difference. Tremendous difference. When we think about those symptoms that we mentioned just a few moments ago, elevated heart rate, sweating, insomnia, headaches, muscular tension, irritability, these don't have to be lived with. Unfortunately, stress imposes these kind of biochemical changes. Not only does stress enable one during the alarm phase to do something exceptional like lift a car off of a grandchild, but it also has a way of exhausting your liver, exhausting your kidneys, blocking your lymphatic system. One of the things I always like to explain to people is that stress plays a very significant role in most of the diseases that you're all contending with on a daily basis. An example of that, by the way, would be fibromyalgia. Very few physicians take the time to explain the realities of what fibromyalgia is with regards to stress. Fibromyalgia is a stress disease. The way it works is very simple. Your adrenal glands motivate your entire system. Like I said, it's your acceleration system. If ever you've been on the top of a roller coaster looking down, you are pumping adrenaline. Your body is profoundly automated at that point. You are mobilized. You're ready to run for your life or fight for your life. And again, your body doesn't know the difference between being chased by a lion and being on the top of a roller coaster in an amusement park. It doesn't know the difference. It can't take any chances. When it's receiving signals from your hypothalamus and your pituitary, it says, hey, we're mobilized, we're ready, whether it's fighting for your life or just having fun at the park. We're geared, we're ready for action, we're not taking any chances. That's how nature set our chemistries up. All right, but while we're mobilizing and producing all this incredible amount of adrenaline in our systems, adrenaline has a tremendously exhaustive effect. You know, it's kind of like during those periods where perhaps you've had one too many cups of coffee, you entertained for a lot of family and a lot of friends, you wanted everything to be pulled off just right, you anticipated it for days and weeks in advance, and at the end of the experience, what happens? You crash. You absolutely hit a wall. Boom. You crash. The big event has come and gone, and so has your energy. And the amount of energy that adrenaline moves is so profound that in the case of fibromyalgia, what's happening is very similar, because with fibromyalgia, the adrenaline pumps. The stress pushes the adrenaline, pushes the adrenaline, pushes the adrenaline for days and weeks and months and years in many cases. And with all that energy being moved, adrenaline is your body's electrical system. It's your body's mobilization system. The lymphatic system is your body's garbage system, your dumping system. So your lymphatic system has to constantly filter viruses, endotoxins, bacteria, yeasts, additives, preservatives. Everything that doesn't belong in your body is being filtered out through your garbage system. That's your lymphatic system. You have 600 of these all around your thoracic areas. 600 filters. But your filters need to be plugged in. And like all garbage systems, they need to be electrically charged to hit the switch so that they can be motivated, they can be turned on, and they can electrically be charged enough to filter poisons, filter viruses, filter bacteria. And no different than your vacuum cleaner at home, if you unplug it, your vacuum cleaner is useless. And if I have enough stress over a period of days, weeks, months, and years, and I continue to exhaust my adrenal system, then I'm exhausting the very electrical system that energizes my garbage system. And if I exhaust my adrenal glands through years and years of stress, suddenly now my garbage system is unplugged and unable to filter that garbage. It's not taking in any less garbage, by the way. Garbage comes in, and now, instead of being filtered, garbage spills over into tissues, into muscles. So people come to see me with fibromyalgia, and all they say is, I got fibromyalgia. My doctor says I need this medication, that medication to kill the pain. That's called painting by numbers. That's not medicine. Medicine would get to the bottom of the problem. Medicine would seek to get that patient's body back into homeostasis. Medicine would educate and empower the patient. Medicine would honor the wisdom of that patient, the deservedness of that patient, to get that body of theirs back into balance. And a medicine man would say, the reason you have fibromyalgia is because you've had too much stress. So instead of just giving you a pill to mask over it, I'm going to work with you as a person first. Let's get in touch with what is firing up your adrenaline. How's your life? How's your lifestyle, your family life? How's your marriage? How's your work? How's your relationship with your boss and your work associates? What was it like growing up? Are you stuck in any of these deep-seated emotional places in such a way that you're still triggering adrenaline inadvertently, accidentally, from something that happened 20 or 30 years ago? Because you're exhausting your adrenal glands and your lymph system can no longer clean itself out and cycle your garbage. So your garbage is spilling out into your muscles and your tissues. We call that fibromyalgia. You're in pain. So this is all stress-based. Obviously, some diseases are much easier to correlate with disease or with adrenal problems and with stress problems. Some diseases are much easier. Heart disease is probably the easiest of all. Blood pressure problems, heart disease, heart attacks, etc. It's much easier to see that. It's much easier to see mental illness, emotional illness. It's much easier to see acute anxiety. It's much easier to see depression. Because again, what I always tell people is, I agree with Chinese medicine that 65, maybe 75% of all disease, physical and mental disease, 65, 75%, is all rooted in stress. And nobody's teaching anybody anything about it. We're just selling you antidepressants that only work for 6 months. We're just selling you medications to make you dependent upon the medications. But we're not teaching you about what stress really is, and we're not teaching you how to empower yourselves. How many people, for example, have anxiety? I had a woman in my office a couple weeks ago who was there expressly for hypertension and for acute anxiety. Acute anxiety and hypertension are all about adrenaline that she's not able to control from something or other. Perception, lifestyle. Meanwhile, she's drinking 4 to 6 cups of coffee a day. And I said, how can that, wait a minute, are you really making the connection? You want to get this done, but you're not connecting the dots. It doesn't work that way. You're going to go back to orthodoxy, and they're going to give you a drug. And that's what orthodox medicine is all basically set up for right now. I had a great experience in the corporate environment. For 5 years, I did some consulting at Titleist down in Acushnet. And I worked a great deal with both nutrition and stress management in those environments, with executives, factory people, the whole shooting match. But at one point, there was a gentleman who was an executive, and he had 1/3, he was only 39 years old, 1/3 of his intestines removed. I said, well, Frank, tell me a little bit about your history. He said, well, I have Crohn's disease, and I have such an acute inflammatory case of Crohn's disease that the doctor said, the only thing we can do is remove your intestines because they're so inflamed, it's useless to put you on steroids at this point. So they removed 1/3 of this 39-year-old man's intestines. I said, Frank, were you ever tested for food allergies? He said, no. I said, Frank, did anybody ever talk to you about food allergies? And he said, no. Well, I instituted an entire food allergy testing program there. And we ran them through a blood food allergy test, which was an immune globulin G test. 100 foods, actually 96 foods, but of those roughly 100 foods, we found that Frank was severely allergic to about 35 foods. 35 foods. And the numbers go from like 100 to 990. Anything over 200 is an inflammatory response to food. It's an allergy. Anything over 200. He had about 16 foods that were in the 900s. 900s! I've never seen anything like it in 28 years. But anyway, I said, look, Frank, I'm going to put you on a diet that's responsive to your test results. I'm going to get you off the inflammatory foods and try to invoke what I call addition through subtraction. Get to the bottom of the problem. If you're a problem solver in life, you're not going to layer solutions on top of problems. Do you layer solutions on top of problems? Okay, you've got this problem, Frank. Let's layer things on top. Let's give you medicines, or let's just remove your body. Let's remove parts of your body, your intestines. You don't want to layer if you're a problem solver. You want to get to the bottom of the problem. That's the only way to really solve problems. So I said, Frank, get the foods out of the diet. He did that. Within 4 weeks, 1 month, he had no more intestinal inflammation. At the end of 90 days, he was off all of his anti-inflammatory steroids, and he felt like a new man. Absolutely no inflammation left. So he found the drive to go back to his physician and say, what is the deal? Why did I have to lose my intestines? How come you people don't know these things? He was really irate about it. But anyway, the answer that he received is what I'm really getting at. The doctor looked back at him and said, Frank, why don't you just take the pills and eat whatever you want? That's the gospel truth. It's a mentality, and by the way, it's a mentality that I won't criticize, believe it or not. Much as I may like to, I won't do that. Because I would honor the position of anybody. But I question patience. I question everybody here with regards to taking responsibility, with regards to empowering yourselves, with regards to being the person who knows more about you than anybody. You should never ever go before any physician with the attitude that you yield to them as total strangers with the sense that they know more about you than you. That's just absolutely criminal. You need to take on a consciousness, an air, an attitude that you know more about yourself than anybody. You've lived with yourself your whole life. You didn't go to med school, so what? They haven't lived in your cells. You have. That counts for a lot more. But it only counts for a lot more if you value it. But I say it's really essential that you understand that stress plays a significant role in 65 to 75% of all these problems, as it did with my friend Frank. So you do have choice in terms of perception. You also have choice in terms of natural supplementation. I want to talk about that for a moment. I did list these supplements: DMAE by Jarrow, dimethylaminoethanol. Up until the late 1970s, that was a pharmaceutical medicine that was actually not an over-the-counter, but rather a prescription-based supplement that has now been released. The FDA has now released it. Well, since the late 1970s, it's been made available in health food stores over the counter. But what does it do? You can do some remarkable Googling and some research on that, but it's amazing, especially for any stress-based disorders that are more mind-based stress. People who have memory problems. Where did I put the car keys? I'm getting so sick of forgetting where I put the car key. You know, one of those kind of things. So a lot of folks really get frustrated with mental stress. You know, I'm not just talking about people in their 60s. I'm talking about people in their 20s and 30s. I hear them all the time saying, I'm just not sharp anymore. What's going on? Well, stress will do that. You know, stress in and of itself is a chemical reaction, like we keep saying, that actually robs your nerve endings of their ability to make synaptic connections. You know, as we say, your cells communicate. When you're trying to remember something, it requires communication of cells. But if you burn those cell endings off from a lot of these very powerful hormones, you're not going to have access to memory. Well, DMAE has been researched extensively. And I use it with a lot of children with ADD and ADHD. And by the way, ADD and ADHD are stress-based conditions. They're stress-based conditions because when you feed kids Cocoa Puffs, food coloring, sugar, simple starches, high glycemic carbohydrates, and I'm not talking about once in a while, I'm talking about being a staple. Staple. How many kids eat vegetables? None. How many kids eat real, viable food? Very few. How many can you slow down long enough to feed? Not many. How many will eat whole grain products as opposed to white, sugary, floury stuff? Very few. It's part of the culture. And it's more than most of us can handle. Because we've been deluged with this tidal wave of fun food. Food is no longer what we sustain ourselves on. You know, food has become sport. You And I certainly agree, like anybody would, that food needs to taste good, et cetera, et cetera. But with these kids, their diet is tragic. So a lot of the adrenal situations that they're all confronted with, this adrenal exhaustion from all the glycemic index problems that they get from foods that are highly processed sugars, white flour products, very little ratioing of protein, very little ratioing of alkalization. Fruits and vegetables aren't there to alkalize them, to buffer their cells. And the proteins aren't there to sustain them. You know, the most common form of malnutrition in America is protein malnutrition. You know the most common place where it takes place? In hospitals. Hospital food. Okay, now hospital is a place for what? Recovery and healing? You bet. It's a place to get your next disease. That's where hospitals are. If you survive the bacteria that's in there now. But DMAE, dimethylaminoethanol, is a terrific way to get the brain back in action again, to get memory happening again, to improve mood. It's a wonderful mood enhancer. And again, there's been some exceptional research about children with ADD and ADHD using DMAE. I use the DMAE in all the kids. Another quick story about corporate work that I did. You know, whenever I'd walk in and out of the factories after a while, they started really bonding with the work that I was doing. They loved the work. In fact, I'll tell you a real quick story about that too. That they sent me to this. I started off doing nutrition work with executives, and we dropped all their cholesterols and passed that test. And I said, "All right, now we're going to have you go through the factories and try to see if you can't get them to eat right." We did that. That worked. And I said, "I have a really much better idea." I say we start doing mind-body programs. We start doing neuroplasticity, get them to think positively, get them to alter their chemistry, support their health factors by getting their brain right, getting their thoughts right. Real cutting-edge stuff. And I said, "Okay, you think you can do this? You know, we're going to send you, like a missionary, we're going to send you to the toughest factory we got. In this factory, they do nothing but complain. We can't handle them. They're out of control over there. They're tough. They're going to eat you alive." By the time I got done there, that factory was my closest group of allies. Okay? And every time I walked by the different desks as I left, so just one more quick thing. How about, what do I take for this? What do I take for that? You know, that kind of deal. Well, one day I was walking by, and this young woman, mother of two, was in her early 30s. And she said, I won't take much of your time, just real quick. She said, "My daughter was just tested for her reading capability. And she got like 25%. And she said, "My daughter is not an unintelligent kid." She said, "I don't want to see her get derailed through the system because of this reading test, this reading comprehension test. Is there anything we can do?" I said, "Yeah." I said, "DMAE." I said, "Put her on 100 milligrams of DMAE once a day. Just 100 milligrams a day." She said, thank you. 2 weeks later, I'm in that factory. 2 weeks later. Big smile, tears in her eyes. She said, in 2 weeks on 100 milligrams of DMAE, her reading comprehension rate went from the high 20s and low 30s up to the high 80s and low 90s in a very short window of 2 weeks. So, you know, the idea that we have options, we have choices. We have choices about our perceptions about life, about stress, and we have choices about how to mobilize ourselves and empower ourselves in natural medicine. DHA, of course, by Nordic Naturals. DHA is a wonderful product. Of course, everybody knows about fish oils. Well, this is one of the fatty acids in fish oils, docosahexaenoic acid, DHA. But it's the one in fish oil, it's the one fatty substance in fish oils that actually helps us to make a difference as far as synaptic connections in the brain. So again, you know, there are many people that have done remarkable studies, wonderful university studies, etc., about DHA. Holy basil by New Chapter. Holy basil, again, has been studied extensively, more overseas. I read a number of studies that were done, university studies done in India, about how it's a cortisol mediator. Now, cortisol is that adrenal hormone, that stress hormone that bounces. So when your energy is like kind of too high and you can't rest and you can't sleep, a lot of people have the experience where during the nighttime they're wide awake, bug-eyed. During the daytime they're falling asleep. That's because your cortisol levels are all imbalanced. You want to mediate that? This is a wonderful way to mediate cortisol. Holy basil, 800 milligrams 2 times a day. Passion flower tincture, great way to get a night's sleep. Passion flower has a flavonoid called chrysin, C-H-R-Y-S-I-N. C-H-R-Y-S-I-N. Chrysin is amazing. University of Maryland has a whole series of studies that they've published regarding chrysin and its ability to mediate anxiety. Passion flower is one of the wonderful natural anti-anxiety medicines. Pantothenic acid, vitamin B5. Vitamin B5. If you're going to rebuild an adrenal gland after periods of stress, you will require pantothenic acid. You know, we always hear about B vitamins as being stress vitamins. The real key to the stress vitamins that is a B vitamin is pantothenic acid. Bach flower essences. Hornbeam is one of my favorites because hornbeam is for specific periods of extensive stress. When your body and mind are both exhausted and have both been really burned out, hornbeam is an exceptional natural medicine. Very, very mild. Very mild, especially for people that are extremely sensitive. Because a lot of folks who are, of course, suffering from stress conditions are by nature very sensitive people. You know, my old adage, what I always tell my patients over the many years that I've been doing the work that I do is, sensitive people in an insensitive environment are a bad combination. We certainly have an insensitive environment, and I know there's a lot of sensitive people in this room, so hornbeam is a wonderful medicine. Folic acid by Solgar. Again, folic acid is one of those wonderful B vitamins that actually helps us genetically with stress, the genetic component. My favorite of all probably is this one here, theanine. Theanine, 100 milligrams 1 to 2 times per day in an empty stomach. Theanine is an amino acid. Nature is incredible. Like we said earlier, nature always looks to balance things out. Green tea has caffeine. Green tea has caffeine. But green tea also has polyphenols. Now, polyphenols and caffeine are an amazing combination to energize somebody. Polyphenols will energize some people even more than caffeine. They'll get your nervous system up and running. Okay? But nature says, we're not going to just do one thing without doing the other. It's a series of balances that nature has engaged. And one of the balancing agents here that nature has engaged with green tea is theanine, because theanine is the agent that says, okay, if the polyphenols and the caffeine are going to give us the boost, the theanine is going to offset it by mellowing us out. So it's the beautiful checks and balances of nature. Theanine is an amino acid, like we said, but what it does very similar stuff to what Nick's work does, the cranial electrical stimulation work, the idea of correcting the brain waves. When you meditate and you have a successful relaxation response, or if you're falling asleep in the easy chair after a Thanksgiving meal, and you're deeply relaxed, you are producing alpha brainwaves. You do yoga, you do tai chi, you do qigong, you're producing alpha brainwaves, deeply relaxed brainwaves. You are at your very best when your brain is relaxed. Your heart's healthier, your immune system is healthier, every cell in your body is healthier. Okay? So what theanine will do is mimic the brainwaves that meditation produces. In other words, a capsule that produces a meditative response. Amazing. Nature has this stuff all figured out. GABA, gamma-aminobutyric acid, another really powerful agent, an amino acid. GABA is a very powerful anti-anxiety medicine, a natural medicine over the counter. No side effects. But you'd refer to GABA and theanine for all intents and purposes as the natural Xanaxes. You know, for people who are worried about the addictive component of Xanax, and well, you should be. Magnesium optimizer, it's a wonderful natural medicine. Magnesium is Mother Nature's nerve tranquilizer. In Jarrow formulas put together what they call magnesium optimizer. In other words, they've balanced out the magnesium with potassium. And even more importantly than that, they put an amino acid in there called taurine, T-A-U-R-I-N-E, taurine. Taurine is a nerve membrane stabilizer. nerve membrane stabilizers. Over the years, I can't tell you the number of epileptic patients or seizure patients that I put on taurine that absolutely corrected their seizures. Taurine will stabilize the nerve membrane, especially in the heart and in the brain. Taurine. So magnesium optimizer is a wonderful, wonderful heart and brain tonic, relaxer. Homeopathic Nux vomica. Nux vomica, homeopathic. 30C is the potency, 3 pellets 3 times a day. For people who are coming through a period of extreme stress. Anybody who's had a real heavy ordeal, a lot of wear and tear, and your body and your mind are really feeling it, you want to consider Nux vomica. If you're burning the candle at both ends and you're coming out of that scenario, Nux vomica is a great way to get yourself back on your feet. Bach flower olive, very similar to the hornbeam. A very subtle, gentle homeopathic way to recharge the brain and the body. And again, as it says here, 3 drops 3 times a day in water. All right, let's just kind of turn the page here. We listed a group of foods as well. All beans, I listed all the foods that are high in tryptophan, because tryptophan is a really powerful hormone that's produced in the brain tryptophan is an amino acid rather that helps us produce a higher concentration of serotonin. Serotonin is a brain neurotransmitter that relaxes us and makes us feel positive. It actually stimulates the left prefrontal cortex, which is the part of the brain that says, I can do anything, I feel happy. So the foods that really will help that are all beans, all nuts, whole grains as opposed to white flour products, coconut, goji berries, soy, dates, flax, pomegranate, sesame, tulsi, tea. These are all different means of regulating cortisol hormones as well as enhancing neurotransmission in the brain. So, in fact, I think over the tables here we actually have, during the intermission coming up in just a minute or two, you can actually preview some of that stuff and take a look at some of the foods that I recommended, some of the herb teas that I recommended, etc. So stress summarized, any or all of our 5 senses perceive or think they perceive threat. As we believe, we then react to all such real and or imagined threats. As we react, we mobilize activating hormones that ramp up all our biological systems, which initially strengthen and empower us and ultimately burn us out. The key is to manage the stress response to the subconscious mind and with the help of deep relaxation. We're going to kind of save the rest of these for the second half of the show. But the presentation from here is going to be much more inspirational. We're going to talk more a little bit about the higher mind components, how you can actually change your chemistry by changing your thoughts, and some of the wonderful corporate programs and I actually brought some of the statistics from some of the corporate work that I did with large numbers of people, changing their body chemistry, changing their cholesterols, changing their blood fats, not with diet, by changing their mind. So we're going to take a brief little intermission here, and we've got some drawings, and we've got some things we're going to buzz through, but check out the tables over here, and I'll be back in just a few moments. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark. Like Mark mentioned, we do have good help here with supplements. All the best natural foods have more of the natural teas and nuts that Mark had mentioned, as well as we have a few other things. We also have Mark's CD and book for sale, and Mark has very generously offered to sign the books that if you are looking to have a book signed after the lecture. Again, just about 10 minutes. Restrooms are directly behind us, and we'll get started in a few minutes with our drawing. So if you haven't already, make sure you get your tickets in or purchase more tickets for the raffles. Thank you so much. Our first raffle of this evening is a one session of nutritional counseling with Suzanne Landry. Unfortunately, Suzanne is not here this evening. She's one of our other nutritional counselors. So I'm going to have you grab the winner. Drum roll, please. Barbie Walsh. Woo! All right. Wonderful Barbie. Next, we have a 1-hour massage therapy session with yours truly. Jeffrey Spratt. And the winner is... Kubuya? Heather? Melrose? Yes, yes, yes. Heather, here you go. Next we have one session with cranial electrical stimulation with Nick Mincola. With Nick, yeah. And the winner is Virginia Stevenson. Now, next one here is one session of nutrition counseling with Mark Mincola. This is with Mark himself. Let's do that next. Next one, we have a 1-hour massage or reflexology appointment with Kirsty Robinson. Kirsty's been doing an awesome job in the corner there with reflexology chair massage. The winner is
Stevenson again.
Wow. All right. Next one is a 45-minute cranial sacral session with myself, Jeffrey Spratt. Cranial sacral is a very light modality.
Jerry Huskins.
Jerry. All right, we do have a CD. Okay, this one is a CD of the last lecture by Dr. Mark Mincola. It's Nutrition and Immunity for the Whole Family. And the CD you can pick up at over our Santi table there. And the winner of the CD is Virginia Stevenson. Oh, no. Arthur Stratton? There you go. Now, last prize, we have two last prizes here. This is courtesy of the Body Studio and Doug Bennett, who's over here. We have two packages. The first one is the gold package. It's a $300 value. The next will be a silver package, which is, I think, half of that value. And one thing to note, all of you who have entered into this prize for the Body Studio will receive one free session with Doug. So if you've entered this, you're all winners. So for the, let's do the silver first. Barbie Walsh. Wow. Now for the gold package.
Al Jackson? Or M.L. Jackson?
Al Jackson? We got and there's several others here, so those of you who entered this will still receive an hour training session with Doug Bennett or one of his staff at the Body Studio. And I believe we have completed the raffle. So, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much. And without further ado, we'll turn the session back over to Mark.
A little house cleaning. All right, let's get back to work. Recently, I visited with a gentleman patient of 15 years. Over the years, he'd always been a reasonably healthy man, and then out of the blue, he was diagnosed with cancer. I strongly disagreed with this diagnosis and suggested that he get an AMAS test immediately for further confirmation. And I was not surprised to learn that his AMAS test results appeared to indicate that he did not have cancer. That's not unusual for that to happen. There are many different criteria whereby cancer is diagnosed. Nonetheless, after intense pressure and great consternation, he decided to undergo the chemotherapy. The decision-making pressure alone of whether or not to undergo the chemo had brought an incredible degree of stress to bear upon him. The stress he carried was palpable. He'd always been an easygoing, mild-mannered man. But that had all changed suddenly and drastically. Over 6 months, I watched his hair turn from jet black to white, his muscle tissue atrophy, his skin dehydrate, and he lost 30 pounds. He'd aged 20 years in 6 months, right before my eyes. I remember wondering, is it the disease, the chemo, or his overwhelming stress? I further thought the disease may not kill him, but the stress of this ordeal just might. I've always believed that once the mind gives in to stress, the thoughts are given the power to destroy. But science had never substantiated that hunch. Not until 2004, that is. I made some very simple notes here that I was intent on breaking down. This is really important. Longevity requires good health. Of course, to live a long, prosperous life, you have to be healthy. Good health requires that cells become renewed. Cells continually renew themselves through cell division. Cell renewal takes place by means of cell division, that is, repair and growth. But within cells, there are chromosomes, and there are caps at the end of chromosomes called telomeres. Telomeres are like long attachments that anchor the cell during its periods of renewal. They stabilize the cell during periods of renewal. Toxic exposures such as pollution, tobacco, alcohol, food additives, preservatives, radiation have all been shown to wear down chromosomal telomeres. When these telomeres anchors are shortened, cell division and renewal can't happen. They can't take place. Again, the idea is the cell needs to be anchored into the renewal process. And all of these negative influences that we just talked about shorten the anchors so that the cell can no longer renew itself. And of course, once the cell can't renew itself, trouble. When cell renewal can no longer take place, cell death results as muscles weaken, skin wrinkles, eyesight and hearing fade, thinking diminishes, and organs fail. Thus, science has learned that negative cellular influences such as pollution, tobacco, smoke, food additives, preservatives, and radiation wear down the ends of our chromosomal telomeres, speeding up our aging process and increasing our risks for disease. But what about mental influences? What about stress from the mental perspective? In 2004, University of California, San Francisco researchers studied women ages 20 to 50 who were described as caregivers of children suffering from cerebral palsy and autism. The researchers discovered two main things. They found that the longer a woman cared for a sick child, the shorter their telomeres. But they also found that perception of stress made a significant difference. The greater the subject's perception of stress, the more significantly it advanced their genetic aging process. This 2004 study was the first ever to confirm that thoughts can advance aging and disease. Thoughts. Prior to that time, it was only believed that we wear ourselves out cellularly, materially. The idea of your thoughts choosing a life that can fend off stress, or choosing a life, unconsciously speaking, that is not able to fend off stress, is a daily reality. It's called placebo and nocebo. Placebo is Latin for I shall please, nocebo, I shall do harm. Baylor School of Medicine published a study in New England Journal of Medicine in 2002, looked at subjects with crippling arthritis. The study's lead author, Bruce Moseley, divided the subjects into three groups. One group had cartilage surgery, another group had all the inflammatory agents flushed out of their knees. Third group was a placebo group that was first sedated and then merely had an incision made so as to convince them that they'd undergone surgery. Okay? So one group, only one of the three groups really had the surgery. At the end of the study, there was a news group that came in, and the news group actually filmed these people, so that's been captured on camera. But all three groups were not told until 2 years later which group they were in. Well, subsequently, the news team, after these experiments, photographed people and shot film of people playing tennis, playing basketball. They interviewed them and they said, I can't believe it, this knee's never been so good, never felt so good, never was so mobile in my life, never had such a great tennis game. A lot of those people, 2 years later, found that they never received the surgery. A lot of those folks basically were engaging in something very different than cellular changes. There's something called expectancy. Expectancy is what's produced in the mind. Your brain has 100 billion neurons that make 100 trillion connections. These connections communicate your personality, knowledge, character, emotions, memories, beliefs, and dreams. Everything that you're made up of, all your realities are basically produced within your thought processes. These people in this particular Baylor University study of 2002, who felt that they were able to suddenly play tennis when they were originally coming in on crutches for this study, again, coming into the study on crutches, and at the end of the study playing tennis better than they've ever played in their lives, only to find out 2 years later that they got sham surgery. Never really got surgery. Expectancy produces a change in brain waves, in neurotransmissions, in hormones. Expectancy changes your chemistry. There have been studies that have indicated that when people knew that they were getting a medication as opposed to a placebo, that it was actually knowing that you were getting something that made the difference, that made the medicine change your chemistry. So in other words, if you have an expectancy of a result, if you have an expectancy, it's like the study that I remember reading years ago, back in the 80s. Someone had done an epidemiological study in Europe of people who went to Lourdes, a great healing center in Lourdes. And they found that the further that people traveled and the longer that people waited to make their Mecca to Lourdes, the more dramatic the healing experiences were. The closer they lived by and the shorter the period of time they waited until they ended up at Lourdes, the less dramatic their healing. Expectancy changes your chemistry. Your brain is told what reality is by your thoughts. Your thoughts dictate reality. Your brain absorbs it, passes it on to your cells. Expectancy has a very powerful effect. If you expect to be sick, you will be sick. If you expect to be well, you'll be well. 1974, a Nashville physician named Clifton Meter was attending to a patient named Sam Londy. Londy, a retired salesman, was diagnosed with cancer of the esophagus, a condition that was considered 100% fatal in 1974. Londy died not more than a few weeks after his diagnosis. Meter was stunned soon after when he learned that the autopsy had discovered that Londy had absolutely no trace of esophageal cancer. Londy had apparently died of negative expectancy. There are many, many such stories. There's another story that took place in Washington, D.C. regarding a gentleman who received last rites at the Roman Catholic Hospital in Washington, D.C. A priest gave the wrong man last rites. He died. And many people refer to that as a voodoo response. The idea of negative expectancy. If somebody believes that they should be sick, or if somebody believes that they should be well, the brain basically produces those results. During the 1970s, University of Rochester psychologist Robert Adder conducted an experiment designed to train rats to develop an aversion to saccharin-flavored water. First, Adder gave the rats saccharin-flavored water. Soon after, drinking the water, the rats were injected with a drug which made them feel nauseous, cyclophosphamide, which created a very powerful nausea in their intestinal tracts. Much to his surprise, Adder discovered that many of the rats were dying. After tireless investigation, Adder learned that not only does cyclophosphamide produce symptoms of nausea, it's also a powerful immunosuppressant. He found that by programming the rats to behave as though the drug were in their systems, he had inadvertently taught them to suppress their own immunity whenever they drank sweet water. This is referred to as a nocebo effect. Again, I shall harm. So again, think about this. When you make direct associations, with certain tastes, flavors, numbers, colors, sounds, smells. Your entire sensory awareness is literally plugged into past experiences that the subconscious mind is holding on to. There were studies that were done on UCLA Medical Hospital back in the 70s, and they found that virtually everybody has very powerful nerve responses to a variety of colors and numbers. I often muscle test people for colors and numbers. Everybody asks to do that, just kind of as a fun thing to do, but I say, this is part of your neurology. The subconscious mind uses the visual cortex and the auditory cortex to literally take in virtually every experience you've ever had. The subconscious mind can process 400 billion bits of information a second. 400 billion bits of information a second. Your conscious mind, only 2,000. So your subconscious mind is your reservoir of your entire experience. And you can change the way it functions, and really need to think very seriously about doing that, because, again, what they found at UCLA is that when somebody says, come on up for a second. You're going to raise up your arm. So make a fist there and resist. A little bit higher. Right there. All right. Deltoid muscle puts out about 30 pounds of pressure. Resist good and strong. Red, orange, yellow. One more time. Red, up higher. Red, orange, yellow, green. One more time. Red, orange, yellow, and green. Green's fine. Blue, violet, indigo, yellow. Number 1, number 2, number 3, number 4, number 5. Raise up again. Number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Thanks. All right, so what happens? The subconscious mind has its own agendas. Your subconscious mind remembers everything that happened, perhaps at age 5, or perhaps when somebody was wearing a yellow shirt. And that's exactly what the UCLA study found. The UCLA study found that you and I have records, we have an archive in our subconscious mind. That every shape, color, sound, smell, all sensory awareness is stored and recorded there. Your nervous system has to remember it. It can't take any chances. There are times that you have dreams, as I've always said, about a dinosaur chasing you in the middle of the night. Now, no logic there. Dinosaurs have been extinct for 4 million years. But yet you wake up at 2:30 in the morning with a rapid heartbeat and you're perspiring because you're being chased by something that's been extinct for 4 million years. The point is your nervous system has to be prepared to respond and react, to keep you well, to save you, to protect you. So your subconscious mind has very strong neurological opinions about everything. Absolutely everything. Everything. So the idea that you have attitudes that you embrace. You have entire thought systems that are called codes, that are literally encoded. Encoded. You think in ways that are patterned. Many people have phobias, for example. You have pattern phobias, pattern ways of thinking that are not logical. They have nothing to do with logic. You have perfectly intelligent people. There are Nobel Prize winners that are deathly afraid of spiders. They're brilliant people. There's no logic there, and they'd laugh at the thought of it until they saw a spider, and they'd stop laughing. The point is that your neurological system is coded in your thought processes. So when you think about issues that make you healthier or unhealthier, and you think stress, which, as we talked about earlier, is a very specific series of chemical actions, can be triggered by perception. we made that delineation early tonight. We said, look, stress is all about perception. It's not simply this black and white issue that you're only going to produce stress hormones when the building is on fire. No, you're going to produce stress hormones when your favorite team is getting beat. You're going to produce stress hormones when somebody's wearing a yellow shirt if you don't remember, if you don't happen to consciously remember that many years ago something happened that perhaps is triggering a memory that's not so happy regarding that color. And again, the UCLA study said that in most cases, people have negative experiences with correlates like that affect their neurological response. So Dad got mad at me and he was wearing a yellow shirt. These various issues are recorded in your subconscious, and they basically were taken in through your cortexes. But the good news is, not unlike Adder's rats, the response is very profound, but it can be reformatted. You can be recoded. So if something tends to stress me out, like for example, why is it that 72% of all heart attacks are on a Monday morning between the hours of 8 and 10? Well, it's because people are getting out of bed and firing themselves up to start another work week. Many people are not happy about that. They're producing a lot of cortisol, they're banging down the coffee, and stress is the order of the day. The point I'm trying to make is that it doesn't have to stay that way. People can choose to get more consciously involved in change. They can note the fact that maybe Monday morning isn't the best time to pound the coffee because maybe on the weekends they're using different foods, more alcohol, more fatty foods, more restaurant foods, staying up later. And then Monday morning, the caffeine is a stimulant to kind of push your heart a little bit harder during a time where the cholesterols are more elevated, etc. One of the things I learned in the corporate environment, it's astounding, but I had people come in on Mondays to have their blood tested. Now, you and I think of cholesterol as being something that's going to be affected on a weekly or monthly basis. That's absolutely inaccurate. It's dramatically altered to the tune of 30, 35, even 40% within a 3 or 4 day period. I found that out the hard way. Because I always tell the executives when they come in to see me, I said, what day did you have your blood test? I said, on Monday. I said, look, you're an executive. What did you do this weekend? Well, I drank a bunch of wine with a friend of mine, and I stayed up until 2 in the morning, and we traveled, and we did this, and we did that. And we ate restaurant food because we can afford it, and on and on and on. I'm thinking, wait a minute. Monday morning is the residue of everything you did on Saturday night and Friday night, and Sunday brunch. So you need to test your bloods on Thursday or Friday. But I said, let's make use of this. Let's take your Monday test this week. I'm visiting with them on a Tuesday, and I'm getting what they were tested for yesterday. Elevated cholesterols, triglycerides, LDLs. And I said, look, go in on Friday and get tested again. Just 4 days later, get tested on Friday, and we'll talk about this next Monday. I would see cholesterols go from 245 down to 190 in the course of a 4 day period. I would see triglycerides drop even more. I'd see triglycerides go from 250 down to 95 in a 4 day period. Because they were doing really solid. Most people Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday are taking relatively good care. At least in our programs down at Acushnet they were. Because our goal was to basically take those 5 days, take care of business, just like you do in every other aspect of life, and then weekends you stretch it a little bit. Of course, they stretched it a little bit too far. We found that out the hard way. But again, the point is, you can choose. You can choose to lower your stress response by choosing different behaviors, and by disciplining the behaviors, having a plan for yourself, caring about your results, caring about your life, caring about your body and your mind. The same thing can be said for the mind. Again, the group that I talked about earlier, I have the results here. I just want to kind of share this with you real briefly, but we put them through a very extended program, 12 weeks. And at the beginning of the program, I said, I want everybody to fill out how well-adjusted they are to their own experience, their own skin, How depressed are you? How anxious are you? What kind of stress factor? Do you feel in control of your life? Do you feel out of control of your life? A very extensive questionnaire. And then what we did is we basically taught them how to choose different thoughts. and how to recode their thinking. And we rechecked it at the end of 12 weeks. 64% said they felt less depressed, 63% said they felt less anxious, 71% said they felt more in control of their thoughts, 71% said they felt more in control of their emotions, 86% said they were more aware of their negative thought patterns and more aware of the negative thought patterns around them. 100% said they felt more empowered in their lives, 100%. 100% said they felt more focused on their goals, 100% said they felt more hopeful about attaining their goals, 100% said they felt more empowered in their life, 100% said they felt more positive about accepting full responsibility for their life, and 100% said they intended to continue practicing what they learned in the program. We didn't give them any pills. We convinced them that their brain was an already existing pharmacy, because it is. Your brain is a pharmacy. You are the drug. But you're the drug of choice. You better know what you're choosing. You better know what you're producing. As we said about nocebo and placebo, you can produce whatever results you want. You can continue to reproduce the same negativity that's been making you sick. You can continue to recreate the broken heart, the painful childhood. You can continue to recreate anything you want. Or you can choose to reformat your entire life by changing the way your brain works, changing your thinking. Again, quantum physics says there's a ghost in the machine. We're not sure what it looks like. We don't know what to call it. We'll call it the observer. There is an observer in there. When we go to somebody's funeral parlor at the end of their life experience, the body looks great. In fact, many people look better in that basket than they did in their entire lives. But there's no spirit in there. The observer, the spirit, it's out of that body. It's the flashlight without the batteries, as I always like to say. But everybody has a flashlight with batteries that's in this room. The objective is to understand that there's this flow pattern. It goes from the ghost in the machine, the spirit, the part of us that we can't define, the observer self. It goes from that part of us to the beautiful mind, to the brain, and to the body. So that part of us that is the ghost in the machine, the observer self, the spirit, whatever you want to call it, the higher mind, if you want to be more comfortable with that, that part of our mind can choose different patterning of thoughts. And it has a choice to create whatever reality it wants and to dictate in whatever fashion it wants to the brain and to the body ultimately, and to create whatever reality it wants. In 1993, Fred Gage and Peter Erickson, researchers at the Salk Institute, broke the spell. They found that the world we had all lived in up until 1993 suggested that whatever brain you were born with, whatever thought patterns you and I are born with, we're going to die with it. It's part of our genes. I remember my mom used to always say, I can't help it, I can't help it. I'd say, Mom, you stop worrying, I can't help it. And I used to believe that. We're kind of raised to believe that, as your mom was, you're going to be the same way, your grandmom, and on it goes, because we're taught that the genetic hereditary code is the one that you're stuck with. But in 1993 at the Salk Institute, we learned that that is absolutely, completely inaccurate. Inaccurate. That's not how we're set up. That's not how we're wired. We are not hardwired. We're neuroplastic. In other words, our nervous system and our brain and our thought patterns and the way we accept reality, believe reality to be pleasant or unpleasant, happy or sad, sick or well, is all a matter of choice. It's all a matter of changeable choice. 100% changeable choice. And the change, by the way, isn't necessarily just slight. It can be profoundly dramatic. It can be absolutely radical change. Transformational change. It's a matter of choice. So all the research made it very clear that they did at the Salk Institute in 1993 that whatever brain you were born with, whatever family system you grew up in, whatever traumas and tragedies and difficulties you went through in life, you did not have to choose to carry them to the end of your life. You have 100% control over what happens from today until the last day you're on this planet. 100% control. Not 99, 100. So it's really essential that we make choices. Aristotle said many thousands of years ago, we are what we repeatedly do. Excellence, therefore, is not an act, but rather a habit. The habit is exactly what Dr. Richard Davidson from the University of Wisconsin talks about. Richard Davidson is the most celebrated researcher in the area of neuroplasticity. He said there's only one word that summarizes all this. One word. And you know what the one word that he uses continuously? The word rehearsal. The word rehearsal. Like Aristotle said, whatever you do the most, whatever you think the most, whatever you say the most, whatever your dialogue is all about. If you live a life of stress, I'm late for the appointment. If you're used to programming yourself to be a human doing, which this culture is all about, then you're going to have a lot more stress. And you're going to age more quickly. And the telomeres are going to shorten. And disease is going to find its way into your life more readily. Like we said, 65 to 75% of all disease is born of this chemical shifting from the kind of thought processes that we call stress. The objective is to make changes. The objective is to change the way we think. The objective is to alter the entire process of the way our brain works. This is an interesting little study. People with generally positive outlooks show greater resistance to developing sickness, colds, and flus than do individuals who rarely revel in upbeat feelings. Frequently basking in positive emotions defends against colds regardless of how one experiences negative emotions, says Dr. Sheldon Cohen of Carnegie Mellon University in Pittsburgh and his colleagues. They suspect that positive emotions stimulate symptom-fighting substances in the immune system. In a study published in 2003, his group exposed 334 healthy adults to one of two rhinoviruses via nasal drops. Those who displayed generally positive outlooks, including feelings of liveliness, cheerfulness, and being more at ease, were significantly less likely to develop cold symptoms. Unlike the negatively inclined participants, they reported fewer cold symptoms than were detected in medical exams. Cohen's analysis of immune measures from volunteers in the 2003 study published in March in Brain Behavior and Immunity points to enhanced regulation of infection-fighting substance interleukin-6. Interleukin-6 in people with positive emotional styles. Interleukin-6 is one of the most powerful immune cells in the human body. Interleukin-6 is an absolute atom bomb to viruses. It's an absolute atom bomb to cancer cells. It's an absolute atom bomb to bacteria. So once again, Dr. Cohen says that the real objective here is that those folks who had more of a positive frame of mind produce significantly higher levels of interleukin-6. Recent research is showing the power of expectations. The power of expectations. They're not just physical, they're psychological and physical. The idea that your expectations can have profound impacts on your brain and your health, says Columbia University neuroscientist Tor Wager. There is not a single placebo effect, but many placebo effects that differ by illness, adds Dr. Fabrizio Benedetti of Italy's University of Torino Medical School, who is studying the effects of patients with Alzheimer's and Parkinson's disease with pain. Doctors have long thought that placebo effect was psychological, purely psychological. Now scientists are amassing the first evidence, direct evidence, that placebo effect is also physical, and that expecting benefits can trigger the same neurological pathways of healing as real medication does. I'm going to say that one more time. Now scientists are amassing the first direct evidence that the placebo effect is both physical and psychological, and that expecting benefit can trigger the same neurological pathways of healing as medication does. Among them, the University of Michigan scientists injected the jaws of healthy young men with salt water to cause painful pressure, while PET scans measured the impact in their brains. During one scan, the men were told they were getting a pain reliever, actually a placebo. Their brains immediately released more endorphins, which are chemicals, of course, that act as natural painkillers, by blocking the transmission of pain signals, and the men felt significantly better. To return to pre-placebo pain levels, scientists had to increase the saltwater pressure. Our brain really is on drugs when we get a placebo, says co-researcher Christian Stoller from the University of Maryland. More remarkable, some especially strong placebo respondents suggest many brains can actually stimulate a very high-level pain relief system. Again, think about what endorphin means. The word endorphin, when you're feeling really good, again, you're going to be visited by somebody you really love, you haven't seen them in a long time, you got all kinds of endorphins happening in your brain, and it's going through your body. Endorphin means brain morphine. Brain morphine. You produce a morphine in your body, in your brain, that science has found to be 25,000 times stronger than anything pharmaceutical medicine produces. Again, I always talk about the stories about soldiers who, in the middle of combat, take a bullet and they don't even know they got hit. And they're running about doing their business, saving people's lives, etc., and find out after the heat of battle ends that they have a bullet in the leg. And that's what endorphins can do. Well, that's not the only time you produce endorphins. You produce endorphins whenever you want to produce endorphins. If you produce the flow pattern from your programming of your mind to your brain, to your body, mind, brain, body, that's how it works. And if you decide to be really happy and really positive, you're producing endorphins all the time. Those are not the kind of hormones that cause sickness. Those are not the kind of hormones that shorten your telomeres. Those are not the kind of hormones that increase your aging process. Those are the kind of hormones that prolong the aging process. Italy's Dr. Benedetti gave Parkinson's patients a placebo and measured the electrical activity of individual nerve cells in a movement-controlling part of the brain. Those neurons quieted down a decrease in firing of about 40%. That correlated with a reduction in patients' muscle rigidity, and the Parkinson's patients moved much more easily. To further prove the power of belief, Benedetti hooked pain patients to a computerized morphine injection system. Sometimes the computer administered a dose without them knowing it. Sometimes the nurse pretended to give it. The morphine was up to 50% more effective when patients knew or believed or thought that it was coming. Likewise, Parkinson's patients moved much better when they were told that the doctors had turned on a pacemaker-like implant in their brain which blocks their tremors. They got 40% more mobility out of Parkinson's patients, lying to them. Lying to them. Having them believe that they were hitting the switch. 40% more mobility. So I always tell my patients, lie to yourself until it's not a lie anymore. Lie to yourself until it becomes your new reality. Lie to yourself in ways that you can convince yourself that yes, you can. Stop saying, no, I can't. Lie to yourself until it becomes a fact. You're the determining factor as to whether it does or not. The objective really here is to understand that you have all the resources in your mind, in your brain, and in your body. You are a miracle machine. And you have the capacity to get far greater results out of your life, your health, and your entire life experience than you're aware of. Like Diane Berry was so good to do this evening, to come here and to talk to you about her life experience. Now, she certainly couldn't have really conveyed in the short time that she was here some of the pain, some of the confusion, suffering, and difficulties that she went through when we first worked together. And to actually have somebody be able to kick hard drugs without some of the means that we all associate with orthodox medicine, but to be able to do it with the courage to do it with the strength, and to do it with the conviction, to grow, to heal, to become more than she was, to reach her potential as a human being. That's courage. That's why she's here. That's why we're here. Everybody comes to this planet to make a difference. Everybody comes here to reach their maximum potential. Nobody came here to waste time. Nobody came here to be minimized. Nobody came here just to make the voyage and leave. We came here to make an impression, to make a difference. Starting with your own life. You have the power, you have the resources, you have the choice. Stress is, as I said when we did a little radio piece about this evening tonight, stress is not as big as you are. You're much, much bigger than stress. But you have to understand it, you have to believe it, you have to embrace it. You're significantly bigger than all your problems. You know, there's a wonderful thing that Einstein said. Einstein said, because of our imagination, we're infinite. That pretty much says it all. We're used to thinking of ourselves as cells, as organ systems, as very limited biological systems. Not so. We are limitless. We are infinite. And we kind of work a little bit harder at putting our lives into that kind of frame of existence. Everything changes. You know, we're used to thinking of exceptionalism as being exceptional. I say exceptionalism can be as commonplace as our willingness to be there. We're used to thinking that that belongs to somebody else. There's 2 new books that I've written this past summer and fall. There's another book that I'm writing right now in June. Actually, I've taken quite a time off. The past 7 months, I've only been working a couple days a week at the office because I've taken the first 3 books that I've published a number of years ago and completely rewritten them, updated them, upgraded them. I've also written 2 brand new books and I'm finishing a 6th as we speak. One of those books was 260 pages and I wrote it in 18 days. So the inspiration is there. And I'm running out of time. So I want to make sure I get everything out. And I would caution you not to waste one moment of your experience either. Grab as much inspiration as you can. Make it a magnificent life. Make it a limitless experience. Because you have that opportunity and that choice. I'm going to come back and summarize in just a minute, but I'm going to come back to questions and answers regarding anything that might be stirring your imagination regarding stress, regarding your healing experience, your life experience. Any questions about anything we've talked about this evening at all? Anybody? Yes? Addison's disease, yes. Adrenal insufficiency, yeah.
And I'm listening to you about the adrenals and everything. Well, I don't have that. And needless to say, I have to live on medication. What is it that I can do? And maybe I don't have to be on high dose of steroids.
Yes, and you mentioned your thyroid too.
And now, with the Addison's, they take tests every 6 weeks. They do blood work on it. And now the thyroid is being affected. And now I'm taking thyroid medication because I'm not producing T4.
All right, great questions. Good answers coming back at you. But first of all, when somebody has Addison's disease, that means the adrenal glands are exhausted. But what happens before something gets exhausted? It's overworked. In other words, you know, my old expression of what happens to the man who bicycles uphill as fast as he can? He collapses. No, so the point I'm trying to make is that before something becomes deficient, it has to be excess. So it's excessive always precedes deficiency. You know, in Chinese medicine, you always break energy down to energy concepts. Okay, the idea of energy being exhausted or deficient means that it started off being too overactive. Too much worry, too much anxiety, too much stress, too much of that overdrive, too much of that acceleration, finally hit a ceiling and crashed. Okay? So the thyroid, which basically is in control of what? Metabolism, weight loss, etc. So Think about the adrenal glands. The adrenal glands are in charge of metabolism in their own way too, aren't they? But they're in charge of what kind of metabolism? Stress metabolism. And again, like we said earlier, if you're sending messages to your adrenal glands that, oh, we're in trouble, whether it's a trip to the dentist or whether it's being attacked by a bear in the woods, it doesn't matter. No differentiation. Same thing's going to happen. So if you're sending messages that you're in trouble and fight or flight hormones are being produced at really high rates, and your genetic predisposition says, we're not going to take too much wear and tear because we don't have a lot to spare here genetically, but you get pushed beyond that point and you're overworking your adrenal glands, you're also going to overwork your thyroid because your adrenal determines your stress metabolism. And that takes precedence over day-to-day metabolism. Okay, your thyroid runs your day-to-day metabolism, your everyday metabolism, how your energy is, etc., how you burn calories. So that's kind of like important, but is it as important as emergency? No, not at all. It's kind of like if you're home and you're doing something really important, okay? You're cooking a dinner for the people you love. That's pretty important stuff, okay? But suddenly the smoke alarm goes off. How important is it that you finish that dinner? You're heading out that door in a hurry, all right? Well, that's how your body works, all right? So if your body says we've got one metabolism regulator that says we're just generally the thyroid here governing how you burn calories, how you have energy, etc., we're cooking a meal here. We're doing something important. We're governing the way you burn calories and take care of business, energetically speaking. Suddenly an alarm goes off, you're going to abandon your thyroid. So, sorry, thyroid, you're not as important. So now you're pedaling at a faster rate. Your thyroid isn't meant to paddle at that same level. It's not meant to function at that same level of intensity. It'll take that hit once in a while, every so often, but if this is a chronic issue that you're tapping into your adrenals and pushing forward, your thyroid's going to crash. Can't take the heat. There's no way the thyroid can keep up with the adrenal glands. Impossible. So, both your adrenals are now exhausted and your thyroid's exhausted from all that pushing. Right. Well, and the adrenal glands can burn down the house. There's an old saying that the fire that warms the house, that cooks the food, is also the fire that can burn the house down. Right? So what can we do about it? It goes back to square one. If I were to ask you commonsensically, is it important for you to learn how to relax? Most definitely. Good answer. All right. That's still square one, isn't it? In other words, imagine if we had gotten to you way back when, before you exhausted these organ systems, and said, look, how about meditation, relaxation, vacation, thinking a different series of thoughts, sitting down with somebody like you and saying, let's talk about how your mind works, how your thoughts work, what your reality is that you've created, like we said a few minutes ago. What kind of world have you built in your mind? Is it a world of safety? Probably not. Is it a world that you've created that says our safety is questionable? We're not sure if we're in good shape here, if everything's going to be okay? And and a lot of people have justifiable reasons for that. That's not the point. The point is, do you want to continue producing it? You can't afford it. That's the bottom line. And you can choose to do something about it. So I say reformat your thought processes. Reformat the brainwaves. Absolutely reformat those brainwaves. One of the things that Nick's doing in our office is, again, we haven't talked much about it. We could do a whole seminar about that. Cranial electrical stimulation. Sounds like something far out. It's very simple. It's a little battery-operated probe that you put in your head, a little headband, 2 probes over your temples, and you sit there for a very short window of time, 20 minutes or so. And over that 20-minute period, it corrects your brainwave signal. Because again, brainwaves determine whether you're producing that chemistry that says, hurry up, we're in an emergency, or no need to worry, we're relaxed. You can actually change the brainwave signals that are talking to your body. Okay? And here's the beautiful part about that, is the research is very strong. That's why we brought the units in. But the research is very, very strong. It says it's accumulative. That's the amazing part about it. It's accumulative. So each time you go through this reformatting, it's money in the bank. So you only have to make so many trips in to get it done before you're literally altering permanently something that should have been altered way back when. Remember I used the term recoding? You need to recode your brain because it's a stressed brain right now. How many people in America have stressed brains? How about most of us? So the medicine of the future is going to be cranial electrical stimulation. It's going to be some form of recoding. It's neuroplasticity. The medicine of the future is changing the way your brain talks to your body. That's real medicine. That's real life-changing medicine. Medicine will never be the same again. You know, suddenly just handing people the antidepressants, the anti-anxieties, forget it. That's already in the past. So I think you really need to be thinking about going right back to that simple core answer. The one thing you've been hungry for since the beginning of your life probably is a different way to think about your world, your life, your mind, your reality. And it doesn't have to be as hard-driven. It's going to be all right. But we need to convince your brain of that. So I suggest you give thoughts to talking to us about CES. All right? Anybody else?
What about the doctors who you're talking about different disorders? This depression is caused by a chemical imbalance in their prescribing, of course.
Yes. The question for people who didn't hear that is, what about doctors who talk about depression as a chemical imbalance? Well, of course it's a chemical imbalance, but here's the question that I ask. Does your brain and your mind and your thoughts and your chemistry work together, or are they separate? In other words, let's break it down. Somebody's in combat overseas. You've heard the term PTSD, a post-traumatic stress disorder. That's an adrenal condition, obviously, and it's, when somebody's fighting in combat, it's pretty difficult doing that thing, obviously, and your adrenal glands get geared up so intensely that you come back and your adrenaline, part of your chemistry, again, adrenaline's chemistry, cortisol's chemistry. Remember I said there are 45 hormones? 45 hormones that you produce under those stressful scenarios that normally you don't produce. Thank God. Wear us out. So the chemical imbalance that they always talk about are those chemicals right there. They're the adrenal chemicals. So somebody comes back from combat. Unfortunately, when they first went away, they weren't producing this cascade of stress chemicals. But since they took on this very traumatic event, went through this traumatic event, they're producing a high concentration of these very stressful chemicals. And does it just shut off? Does it shut off? No, it doesn't just shut off. It's become coded. Okay, so in other words, here's how it works. I'm stressed out. I produce chemicals that I don't normally produce. Those chemicals are tough on me. They age me and the whole thing, like we talked about. All right? But do I just flip the switch and turn them off? I can't. So when that is a chronic issue that's affecting the way I behave and think and act, we call it depression. So that's the chemistry of depression. It's all adrenal chemistry. It's neurotransmitters. And again, think about this. We talked about serotonin with the food and stuff. Tryptophan triggering serotonin, a feel-good hormone. You're not producing as much of that anymore. Before you go to combat, you're producing feel-good hormones. You have every reason to. You had a good life, good program, good coding. Now you've had a traumatic experience, the coding shifted. Your brain chemistry is just shifting, the way you think, and the chemistry. Here's a really important factoid. Thoughts, listen to this, thoughts produce matching chemistries. Thoughts produce matching chemistries. So if I'm really producing a lot of negative thinking, I'm producing a lot of negative chemistry with that. You can't separate the thoughts from the chemistries. But that's what depression is. Depression is the thought process that produces these negative chemistries.
Can drugs only take care of that? Or can you do it through homeopathic ways and means?
Well, here's what I would say about that. Drugs, you need to first of all address each drug case by case. There are SSRIs, serotonin reuptakes. In other words, there are medicines that increase the ability to absorb and reabsorb serotonin. Or there are GABA reuptakes, that we talked about GABA. Xanax, for example, is a GABA reuptake medicine, so it helps us more efficiently absorb and produce a lot more receptor activity, a lot more catcher's mitts for GABA. Okay? But Here's what I'd tell you about that. After a period of time, if I'm just producing these GABA receptor responses and these serotonin reuptake responses, am I going to adjust? Yeah. Because nature, the nature of our brain chemistry, is going to constantly change. Are you the same person today you were a week ago, a year ago, 10 years ago? Of course not. You've changed not only in chemistry, you've changed in your thought processes, in many, many ways you change. Well, that's because nothing stays the same, so we're constantly adapting and readapting. So cells are readapting to these medications in ways that, you've read stories, for example, about how many of these antidepressants only work for 6 weeks to 6 months and they got to be changed. Why? The medicine's not any different. You are. So the nature of your brain chemistry says, that's not working for us. We're going to make you change. But do you think it's trying to make us change the medicine or change the way? Anybody else? Any nutrition questions? Any stress questions? Everybody's got it. All right, good. All right, everybody. It's my great pleasure to serve you in the ways that I do, and I appreciate your presence. And I hope everybody takes something vital home from this experience and something transformational home from this experience. And it's my wish that your life becomes profoundly transformed and remade, renewed, and that you become empowered to do so and inspired to do so. I thank you very much.